from a utilitarian perspective, somebody benefits. But who really benefits, and how can we balance this paradox? It takes 20,000 liters of water to create 1 kilogram of cotton. 1 kilogram of cotton. That's the equivalent to make 1 shirt and 1 denim trousers. Now, 20,000 liters of water can serve a family for up to a month. This is the cost of our clothing. This has left villages without water, but yet we stand in front of our wardrobe and say, I have nothing to wear. How do we balance this paradox? This brings me back to Kant's categorical imperative of using one as a means to an end. We simply use another as a means to an end. And I think of my mentor, my late mentor, Kay Davitian, who worked in the factories in China and India and spoke to me of the numerous persons who worked for as little as $1 a day, so we can have limitless choices to stand in front of our wardrobe and say, I have nothing to wear. How do we balance this paradox of ethical fashion? You might be asking, what can I do as an individual now that will help to balance this paradox? You can simply demand more sustainable fabrics. Polyester is 2 to 3 times more toxic than cotton. 35% of the microplastics found in the ocean are from our laundry and textile waste. Now, we see where we've moved from one end of the pendulum to the other, where we've used to create sustainable fabrics that have a shorter lifespan, to now creating fabrics that are toxic, synthetic, but have a longer lifespan. These fabrics sit in the landfill for thousands of years. It will outlive you and your grandchildren. So we need to simply demand more sustainable fabric options. Now, polyester may not be the option, but neither might be cotton. We need to employ more technology for more sustainable options for our consumers. This could be bamboo, this could be linen, this could be hemp. But as consumers, we have the power to demand more from the manufacturers. We can't just accept what is given to us. Now, second, we need to know our manufacturers. We need to know our suppliers. Now, this fashion industry, we have coined many terms to ease the guilt and anxiety from shopping. And you hear it every day when you go into the malls. Ethical fashion, eco-fashion, guilt-free fashion, and the list goes on, all to lure you to shop more. But 43% of these sustainability claims are actually false. They're greenwashing just to encourage you to shop more. So we need to read the transparency indexes that are published to understand which suppliers are actually conforming to sustainable practices and shop only with those suppliers. We have the power as consumers. We just don't realize. And the third option that you can do as an individual is to alleviate yourself of the anxiety that comes with this existential vacuum of excess and choice. Reduce reduce your anxiety, minimize your option, limit your choices. We are in a paradox, and we are the ones who can get ourselves out of it. If we look at the deontological ethics of using one as a means to an end, we would understand that we have a natural human duty and obligation to balance this paradox. Now, the call is on the consumer to make an aggressive shift towards sustainable options and force the hand of the manufacturers to supply this demand for more sustainable options. Until we see that shift, any sizable shift from any side of the spectrum, whether the producer or the consumer, essentially, we are two heads of the same beast. The manufacturer will keep producing, and we will keep consuming and stand in front of our wardrobe and say, I have nothing to wear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kania. And thank you all for being here this evening. I am so proud to welcome our next speaker this evening, who happens to be the youngest speaker we've ever had at TEDx Oneonta. She's 17 years old, and I am certain that she is poised to be a change agent and an inspirer to our youth. Please welcome Noemi Florent.
Did we all hear that? That grand round of applause? But what if we had a different kind of applause just then, a more eerie one where everyone was clapping at the exact same time? The magic of it would kind of fade, right? And that's what makes a round of applause so beautiful. The fact that everyone is clapping differently, at different speeds, volumes, and at different frequencies. It's an art. The diversity of the claps is what makes one round of applause. This concept of diversity, creating one beautiful thing, is such a pillar in everything, especially in what I, as your speaker, Noemi Florent, will be speaking about today concerning AI and algorithmic bias. Unlike clapping, when we think of art, we think of painting, right? Speaking of painting, I go back to this memory I had 2 years ago where I was painting with my friends at a picnic. We chose the perfect day and the perfect time. There was 1 hour until the sun was about to set, and there was a beautiful pond right behind us. To take advantage of the sunlight, we decided to take our paintbrushes and our canvases and to begin painting. To be honest, some of us had quite a unique choice of what to paint. One of us painted a frog with a birthday hat on. Another one of us painted a self-portrait of them eating a banana. As for me, I took the different array of colors and I painted on my own canvas and allowed my creativity to flow onto my canvas. And my friends loved it. They thought it was great. I did too. And then I had this one urge to just dip my paintbrush in the color black, and I wrote the word milk. Why I wrote milk, I don't quite remember my thought process back then, but it still looked great because somehow the randomness and the diversity of all these elements made it vibrant. Just like a vibrant painting like mine, AI flourishes when it embraces diversity. You see, this diversity stems from the people who develop these AI algorithms, and that could be based on anything: race, gender, age, education, or even morals. But because of the current lack of these diverse perspectives amongst developers, systems have become biased. This is why I asked you to think of the little humans who hate broccoli and homework, but love getting into weird stuff that confuses anyone who is not around their age. We need the contributions of a young aspiring artist, the little Picassos and Van Goghs of the future, to paint AI's masterpiece with their diverse perspectives to create one that celebrates the similarity in all ways and pushes boundaries. Briefly, let's delve into that term that I incorporated into my introduction, algorithmic bias. It has many names, including the coded gaze, coined by the activist Dr. Joy Buolamwini. But what it is a phenomenon that occurs when AI systems produce unfair and discriminatory practices. Today, we are looking at these AI systems and analyzing how could there be biased, because they just excel at mathematical calculations and computing binary code. And the very answer lies in how they're developed. While they may be based on simple mathematical calculations and statistics, their design and functionality are shaped by the humans behind the code. There are a multitude of ways that bias can manifest during the development process, but one of the key things about these algorithms is this. They learn from massive data sets, which are created by people. People with their beliefs, perceptions, experiences, and yes, biases. Fundamentally, AI systems replicate the prejudices and values of their creators. Similar to an artist's brushstrokes on a canvas, the choices made during development influence the colors of data that emerge. Consequently, if these choices reflect human biases, the AI system will perpetuate them in its decisions. Okay, so now that we understand how algorithmic bias can infiltrate these AI systems, we cannot ignore the real-world consequences of this phenomenon. We're just in too deep. So, let's step beyond the code to explore how algorithmic bias can actually be another tool in the toolbox to discriminate against particular groups of people. For instance, consider Compass, a software containing a predictive machine learning model used in law enforcement. It would give defendants risk scores on a scale of 1 to 10, predicting how likely they are to recommit a violent crime. And this score was used to determine whether or not the defendant should be kept in custody while awaiting pretrial. Twice as likely. That is how much more likely Black individuals are to be classified as high risk than their white counterparts by this model. Hence, an individual, a Black individual, for instance, who might have been wrongly accused of a crime, may be kept in custody, while a more dangerous individual will be allowed to roam free in society. This is just one instance of where the public safety is threatened. It is crucial to recognize that this is not just an isolated incident, because algorithmic bias infects every single domain influenced by AI. For instance, consider another one that hits closer to home, the job application process. Not too long ago, Amazon actually created an AI model that would pick the top 5 applicants out of a pool of 100. But it was discovered that the very same algorithm was biased against women. What it did was that it would analyze the applicant's application and looked for keywords like woman or any others that hinted towards the applicant identifying as that gender. And it was the same opposite for men. So now we are forced to consider this. If an AI powerhouse like Amazon is making mistakes like this one, imagine how it is for the smaller companies who don't possess the same depth of resources. How do we fix it? While the solution is far from simple, we do have a wide array of solutions available to us. Today, I highlight one that involves AI education for children. By introducing children to AI concepts, we encourage them to explore this fascinating field and enable them to bring unique insights, values, and experiences to the table. Consider the AI Education Project that provides K-12 students free AI education resources. And as initiatives like this one reach schools and communities worldwide, we realize that not only do they break down barriers, but they're also crucial for fostering diversity within the field of AI. While computer science was my passion for most of my life, I actually had a period of time where I was quite interested in investing. I mainly enjoyed it because of the math and the analysis of financial data. While it was quite 4 years ago, I don't remember every single thing, like how to use the equity to debt ratio to analyze a company. But what I do remember is the wizard theory. It was where regular people thought investing was so complex. There was this box around investing, and it was magic. And the only people who could access it were the wizards or the traders. And I would question, why do I remember this? And why do I keep talking about it? And I realized it's because it's the exact same phenomenon happening within AI. In fact, the box is even bigger. There are only AI experts who have access to the black box and have this magic to even access it in the first place. The main reason is because we believe that computers are so intelligent, they're cutting-edge technology, including AI. I mean, intelligence is in the name, right? They can't make that many mistakes. But they can. It has been a recurring problem of not having much diversity within the AI experts. And there have been improvements made in it. But we are forgetting one group: kids. The main excuse to not include us is because, oh, it is so technical. It's too technical for you to understand. Well, it is technical. I mean, who wants to listen to fine-tuning hyperparameters for machine learning models? But children can embark on a learning journey that goes beyond just coding and technicalities. They can learn more about the societal impact of AI and how to become responsible AI developers who develop these AI systems that genuinely benefit humanity. This empowerment cultivates a unique kind of environment that challenges biases, that celebrates diverse perspectives, and drives innovations to create these AI systems that truly represent the needs and aspirations of all communities. Imagine a future where AI developers and researchers who hail from various backgrounds all come together, to build these beneficial AI systems. In order for a future like that to occur, we must seize this opportunity to use these initiatives and encourage children to explore this fascinating world of AI. We must seize this opportunity to shape an AI-powered future that celebrates the full spectrum of human experiences. As I finish my talk, I'd like you all to clap one more time for me. I'd also, As you clap once more once I finish my talk, I'd like you all to think about the person next to you. Think about how distinct their clap is, how distinct they are. Then step back and listen to the collective round of applause around you as a unifying moment of diversity. Embracing this very essence is how we create an AI future where the colors of data blend seamlessly on AI's canvas. Thank you.
Wasn't she incredible? And I know, because this time last year I gave a TED Talk, but there's no way I could have done it at 17. So I'm just so impressed with her. Our next speaker hails from the state of Georgia, and she wears many hats, and that's what she's going to be speaking about tonight. She is a mother, she's a wife, she's a CEO, and she's a best-selling author. Please help me welcome Julianne Kirkland.
In the 1800s, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." That statement feels even more relevant today as we face an overload of social comparison, unrealistic expectations, and a rapid-fire cancel culture, together proving what society deems as relevant and significant. If identity is who we are, and who we are feels unsafe to be fully expressed because of where we are and who we are around, then who we are only has two responses: conform our convictions or create multiple versions of ourselves. As of 2022, the personality test industry alone was a multi-million-dollar industry, growing at a rate of 10 to 15% each year. To date, there are over 2,500 different personality tests available: Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, and DISC, just to name a few. These tests are designed to give you better understanding and insight into who you are, why you are, what label you best fit under, and how you are to express yourself so that other people can better understand and interact with you more effectively. So why in a world where we have more access and greater resources than ever before, all designed to deepen our level of self-understanding, are we in what I believe to be the greatest identity crisis our world has ever seen? The reason why is because society's narrative for how we are to understand identity has become completely divergent. I experienced this several years ago when I found out I was pregnant with quadruplets. That's 4 babies at one time. It's okay if you need a minute with that. I still need a minute with that. But it was because of this pregnancy that I was forced to challenge everything I thought I knew about who I was. For so long, I had been the mom of 2, the wife of 1, the founder and CEO of my company, and each of those roles had its own set of rules. I was validated as a mom by the happiness of my children and the acceptance of other moms around me. I got the minivan, even though I wanted the Jeep. We did all the arts and crafts, even though the smell of Play-Doh makes me nauseous, and I'm pretty sure that glitter comes straight from hell. I went as far as to reduce my hours at work, even though I loved being there and was passionate about leading my team. The term mom guilt was used more as a password to get into the cool working moms club than an actual expression of how I felt. For the sake of inclusivity, I neglected my wants and desires in order to conform with whatever society said made me a good mom. And vice versa was true when I was at work. I denied to express the parts about why I loved being a mom. My kids elevated the adventure and the curiosity side of me. They awakened me to the beauty of life without judgment. And they reminded me just how much freedom comes from the silliness of play. But being a good CEO, that means focusing on the bottom line, bringing home the bacon, and using phrases like, "Don't take it personally, it's just business." I juggled the parts well. I showed up in the right role at the right time, wearing the right hat, and I was good. Until I wasn't. Trying to manage 4 teeny tiny babies, plus my other 2 children, my husband, my employees, and my father who had just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Trying to manage all of those individual identities, along with the multiple identities I had created within myself, was no longer an option. Something had to give. And had it not been for the various masks I was wearing, it would have been my sanity. This is when I learned that society is offering up conflicting narratives for how we are to comprehend identity. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile. Allow me to explain. As we grow up, we naturally begin to question who we are and where we fit into this world. It can be a challenging and confusing time as we often look to society to help us to find ourselves. And since everyone holds a different perspective, we tend to dissociate in order to adopt personal expressions that best meet other people's expectations of us. This results in a fragmented identity. Fragmentation is phase one in the identity funnel. And for a while, living this way appears right. I mean, the people around us seem happy, and therefore we feel pretty good. However, as people and circumstances inevitably change, we are forced to encounter the resistance of the impossible task of trying to be everything to everyone at all times. This leaves us feeling unworthy because we're constantly doubting and comparing ourselves, feeling like we're not even good enough to live up to our own standards. This way of thinking wreaks havoc on your mental peace. And when you lack peace, you will once again begin to question who you are and what's your purpose. In order to break free from this cyclical delusion, we must begin to shift how we think about identity. Instead of relying solely on external validation, we must begin to connect with our inner values and strengths, allowing ourselves to view things more clearly. This drives us into phase two, unification. Unification is where we bring together our once spread too thin, separated being into a harmonious and coherent whole. This allows us to navigate life's challenges with greater resilience and authenticity. The journey to self-discovery is a long, evolving process that eventually leads into integration, phase three. Integration is where our now unified being operates synergistically in all areas of our life, producing a greater sense of fulfillment and belonging that isn't dependent on external validation. The identity funnel takes us from scattered, emotionally and mentally disconnected, through the process of self-discovery, introspection, and self-acceptance to a new cohesive expression of our most authentic self. You see, I would love to tell you that when I realized that I was just cycling through the fragmentation phase, that my life changed forever. However, I was pretty stubborn. And although I knew things were off and that I wasn't living my best life, I didn't really feel it was bad enough to have to change anything. I thought, surely I can manage. Problem is, once you're made aware of something, it tends to keep showing back up until you pay attention to it. And during this time, my father's Alzheimer's had taken a turn for the worse. At just 63 years old, he still had so much physical strength and energy. He became extremely aggressive and would wander often. My mom was no longer equipped to care for him on her own. So as a family, we decided to put him in a care facility that specialized in Alzheimer's patients. And although this was their area of expertise, they had not yet dealt with such a young patient who had such a broken mind, and he escaped several times because of it. One afternoon, I decided to take a few of my kids up to see their dude. That was my dad's chosen moniker for his grandkids. And when we got there, a nurse pulled me aside and said, "I was told not to tell you this, but your dad escaped this morning and was found several miles down the highway by the mailman, and nobody even knew he was gone." And in that moment, I was frantically going through my identity Rolodex in my head. Like, which version of me should I show up as now? Who would have the best response? Because the leader in me wanted to call an emergency meeting. The mom in me wanted to protect her children from seeing the anger in me come out. The wife in me wanted to call my husband and get his opinion. And the daughter in me just wanted to do whatever it took to help her daddy. So I broke my dad out that afternoon. And in the car on the way home, I called my mom to confess what I had done because the little girl in me was feeling very overwhelmed, guilt and shame for having broken the rules. I knew I could do a better job of taking care of my dad. I mean, we'd already doubled our family in one fell swoop. What was one more? Surely I could manage. And we ended up having a great afternoon. And that evening after dinner, we were all gathered around watching TV. And the achiever in me was feeling mighty proud of herself. One of my children began to cry. I didn't pay it much attention, as this was a common occurrence with 6 kids. My dad, however, scooped up my son and began squeezing him. Watching his lips turn blue, I yelled, "Dad, what are you doing?" "I have to make the noise stop." And in that moment, it no longer made sense to try and figure out which version of me should show up, who would have the best response. The resistance before me was too great and the time was too short. "Dad, put Walker down now." All of a sudden, my dad softened as he returned to lucid thinking. He lowered my son to the floor and casually went back to watching TV. As I went to grab my son, I began crying as I accepted the fact that I could no longer sacrifice who I was as a mother in order to appear as a good daughter. Because the truth is, being the best daughter meant trusting myself as a mother and honoring all parts of me. So the next morning, I found a lockdown care facility that could take my dad. And he would die just 10 days later. Had I not shown up in the fullest, most authentic version of myself, I would have been consumed with guilt. But because I desired to generate the most loving response possible for all who were involved, no separation was needed, and therefore neither were the masks. And therein lies the paradigm shift. You cannot experience the joy and the peace of having internal validation that comes from the expression of an integrated identity while still looking to other people to approve who you are and how you show up. Authentic representation of your best self demands congruence, not conformance. If I were to add to Emerson's wisdom, I would say to love yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else, challenge your worth, is the only way you can ever truly be yourself. And I know this resolve sounds easy. Oh, just love yourself. However, according to the National Science Foundation, the average person has between 60 and 80,000 thoughts per day. And out of those thoughts, 80% are negative. This often sounds like, I'm doing all the things, and I'm doing none of them well. Or, it is what it is. Or perhaps the most common, there's just not enough time in the day. So how is it that these negative thoughts affect our ability to live out of an integrated identity? Well, I've never known love to be the expression of a negative thought. Have you? Science has proven that the experience of love involves a complex interplay of neural and hormonal processes in the brain. And even though the experience of love may be complex, does the choice to love have to be? The greatest lesson that I learned from a disease that disintegrated my father's mental faculties was this: as long as you were able, never take for granted your ability to choose one thought over another. Because if identity is who we are, and understanding who we are begins with a thought in our mind, then it stands to reason the answer is to choose the positive thought over the negative one. And this practice can be as simple as this. Step number 1, recognize that you're having a negative thought. Number 2, take a deep breath. Bring yourself back into the present moment. And number 3, ask yourself, what's a better way to think about this? This slight shift out of a negative thought is truly an act of self-love, and dare I say is required for unifying a once fragmented expression of your identity. Because the truth is, identities were never meant to be managed. They were meant to be merged. It's a new paradigm shift, and believing it is your choice. Thank you.
Three speakers done, 3 to go. We just want to take a small little moment to talk about where we've come as TEDx Oneonta. After tonight, we will surpass 30 speakers and 30 ideas shared on our stage. And we don't want to forget those that have been with us a few years ago and remember the great ideas that they left on our stage for us to consider going forward. So I want to give you just a quick reminder of a couple of speakers. Maybe you were there in 2018 when Lauren Parsons came, at the time from Canada, but originally from New Zealand, to talk about how we can be more fit at work without having to go to the gym, which caught my attention. And then in 2019, the next year, Matt Episcopo came and talked about how we can make good connections with people and try to expand our networks. So then I had an idea of how we can remember those. So just for a moment, I'm going to give you a little bit of what Lauren Parsons gave us. And all you have to do is you don't have to go anywhere. You can stand up and just, stretch. It's better to do it together. You could do it while I'm doing it, because I'm stretching it. I need it. This is the best that I can do. You do the arms. You don't have to do much. Just get the blood moving. That's all you got to do. Feeling it? Feeling good? All right, now that you're up, you're stretched. Thank you, Lauren. That's all the workout I need. Don't get to sit down just yet. Matt talked about how to network and how to introduce ourselves and to make positive connections. And sometimes it's just as easy as looking at the person next to you and saying hi. I'm sure that you're sitting next to someone or someone close by that you haven't met before. So now is a great moment to turn around and say, hi, my name is... Okay, you've made the introduction. On with the talks. You'll have a chance to get to know that person later, and I hope you do. So we can thank Lauren Parsons and Matt Episcopo for giving us a little flavor there of what they left for us a few years ago and how we can make positive connections, and it's just as easy as that. Now we'd like to share with you another speaker who's come to us today from Los Angeles, and he's going to talk about volunteerism. And I'm very excited about his talk. Please join me in welcoming Juan Carlos Montenegro.
Imagine having a world, our community, where actually everybody is willing to support each other, to give that step, that hand that someone is always looking for. Wouldn't this world would be totally different? When I was 19 years old, it was one night in the middle of the Amazon jungle, and I needed to walk from the classroom to the bedrooms. And it's kind of like a football field where you need to walk. There is no lights, there is nothing. And I was walking, feeling totally fulfilled by the job that I was doing. I was being a teacher, I was actually helping people. I was in this native place that was amazing in the sense of nature and everything else. I was living with the native people that call Jibaros, or it's called Achuaras. It was really interesting because these people, if you have heard about them, are the people who, when they were upset or they have fight with each other, they will go and kill the enemy and cut the head and shrink it. That actually happened. Now, the beautiful thing about this story, I never lost my head. I was actually able to keep it during the whole experience. And I was saying, what do I do here? Society is asking me to do money. Society is asking me to have the house, to be reliable, to do all these things that sometimes are just stressful. And here I am, working and giving my life to teach. I was happy. I was fulfilled. But what is interesting is my life was not always like that. Even though I was 19 years old when this happened, my life was not always like that. When I was 40, I actually learned that I have dyslexia. And dyslexia is this different way of seeing things and reading. And what is interesting is when I was in the high school and elementary, I always was pinpoint like the person who was dumb, the person who was not good, the person who never got good grades. So I always was the troublemaker. So much so that my parents, I was actually many times, why my parents were fighting is because of me. So I never felt, in a sense, belonging. I never felt that I was part of something until I actually went to this volunteer experience. One of the stories that really changed my life is to be able to go to high school, you need to take a test. And if you pass the test, you choose the high school that you can go on, and that will be fine in South America. I took 3 tests, and I failed the 3 tests that I took. So at one point, my mom was totally upset and sad because she didn't know what to do with this poor son that couldn't study. So she actually was crying in one of the schools after receiving the test. And this guy just walked by and see my mom and said, "Lady, why are you crying?" And my mom says, "I don't know what to do with my son. I don't know what is going to happen with him. He didn't pass any test, so I don't know where to put him to study." And it happens that this guy actually was someone who used to work for the government, and he says to my mom, "Bo, the school owed me a favor. And what I will do is I am going to ask them to please accept your son as a way of saying thank you." My mom got excited, went to my dad and shared this story with my dad. Next day, my dad got to the office of this guy and said, "Hey, you offered to my wife this favor." And he says, "Yes, here you have the letter." So my mom, the letter, and myself went to the high school and presented the letter to the director. And the director grabbed my hand and tells me, "The first thing that you do wrong, you're out." I was 12 years old. Imagine how I felt. Now, things happen, and I believe in miracles. So when I got to my first day of school, I learned that this director was moved to another place, and we have a new director who did not know about my story, who did not know anything about me. So I was happy. Nonetheless, the dyslexia doesn't disappear. That means that I was not a good student, and I failed every single class. When I became 18 years old, the school has this program that is called the volunteer program. And the idea is you will go to a place that we send you, and you will actually help. So I say, I will go to the jungle, I will go to wherever you send me, and they actually send me to the middle of the jungle. And I have some pictures to show you, so you can see a little bit. That is the middle of the jungle. The name is called Wasakensa. And as you can see, I was walking from the schools over there to the room. And as you can see, there is no light whatsoever. A little bit of the pictures. Here I am. I was handsome, definitely. I think so. Please say yes. Thank you. I was here in the river. Believe it or not, I was taking a shower every day in that river. And if you go right now to the jungle, to this place, you still live in the same conditions. It's not that has changed a lot. My students, my room. How many of you complains about your room? Look at my room. I live over there for a whole year. I had to do everything, fishing, haircut, everything. I mean, whatever they needed it to do, I will be doing it. And that was the beds where the people live like that nowadays, 2023. So what happened when I got to the jungle is I go to the director of the community and I say, "Father, here I am, ready to do whatever you ask me to do." The priest looked at my eyes and he said, "You know what? I need a teacher, and you will be a teacher." And I look at him and I say, you don't know what you're talking about. Honestly, I don't even know how to study. I don't know how to retain things in my mind. And he says, I don't care. You will be a teacher. And I was like, okay, if you're telling me that I need to be a teacher, I will be a teacher. He gives me the key from the library. He gives me the pensum of studies and say, go ahead, and you will become a teacher. So I start to study, and I learned how to study when I was 18 years old. And it was amazing because I became a teacher, and becoming a teacher actually learned how to be someone. I started learning about myself. I was so excited about this that I actually left the missions when the term was over, and I went home and I said, Dad, I want to study. And my dad was like, what? You want to what? Yeah, I want to study. I want to do something. So we went to the university. I got my engineering in business. After that, I got 2 master's degrees, and then I finished getting my PhD, which is amazing for someone who is just in the area that I have. So I believe so much in this about the volunteer program that my PhD was all about research in what it means to become a volunteer. So I was invited to come to United States in 2001, and the first thing that I did is I started developing the volunteer program. It's so amazing what is possible about the volunteer program because it helps you to think out of yourself. So many times we're so focused in what happens to me that when we give attention to other people, we realize that what happens to me, first of all, is not that bad, but it helps us to process. How many of us have had that beautiful experience? I have a company over 100 volunteers. The summer programs that we have in Los Angeles, I have 2 summer programs where almost 300 teenagers visit us every year to do volunteer program. And it's amazing because after these 300 teenagers are there, I start talking to them. I say, what do you learn? What is something that grabs your attention? And I have seen miracles about many ways in young people. 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a group of 17 leaders who are probably watching or will be watching this video, and they were so excited. They were like, please tell my name. I said, I can't because you are too many. We're like, but they say something about it. Well, I am saying this. Even this TED Talk is giving in their names because they have been so powerful to give themselves away to other people that they are transforming that society that we have. They're transforming the culture. So I asked these 17 young people, what did you learn about your volunteer experience? And they say 3 things we learned that actually moved us all nowadays. Number 1 is be present. Do you know how many kids actually right now are in just the computers, the screens? Go and ask, what is the time that they spend in the screens? And you will be surprised. So being a volunteer actually helps you to get out of the screens, to be able to connect, to be able to be present. Number 2 that they say is be kind with yourself as you are kind with others. They're learning to be kind with themselves. Many young people nowadays suffer that they don't understand who they are. They don't understand where is in society. And with social media, sometimes it's a lot of pressure and depression, anxiety, and all those type of things. When they volunteer, they understand to be kind with themselves. And the 3rd thing that they learn is actually that they need to communicate better. It's just amazing, even in our homes, sometimes we text people to say, hey, lunch is ready, come on, do something. The communication, the one-on-one. And what is interesting about all this is the young people that I'm talking about, they are 14 to 18 years old. They are young people from, I will say, middle-class families. They are young people who actually go to private and public schools. So this is for everybody. So what is the challenge for me and for this beautiful community that you have over here is that if you're an adult, find a way to promote the volunteer. Find a way to help young people to become involved. If you have a business, create internships. Accompany young people in the process. If you yourself want to do something, do something. Go and volunteer. Go and change the society that we have. Because in reality, imagine a world where everybody will be able to actually do something different. As Dorothy was saying, the best expression of democracy is voluntarism. Why, you may ask? Because when you go and vote, you actually do that once every election. When you volunteer, you change the lives of people every day. You choose where you want the country, the community to go. So challenge for you today is go and do something for someone else, and you will see how your life change. Thank you.
Juan Carlos Montenegro, thank you. So I got a quick question for all of you. How many of you here ever feel overwhelmed? Just once in a while, right? Exactly. Everybody does. So our next speaker is going to give you a different look at what success looks like. Please welcome to our TEDx Oneonta stage, Jean Tien.
Dream bigger. But when is it big enough? Aren't you exhausted working hard to chase that next big thing? I know I was. We're told that hard work is critical to success, but what if hard work is actually holding us back? I was 4 years old when my parents moved us to the United States. My brother was less than a year old. With nothing more than a couple of suitcases, my parents moved us to this country with nowhere to live. We relied heavily on family until we could afford a place of our own. Our first house was small with cracked windows. I shared a bunk bed with my older cousin, and I remember being in the basement helping my parents scoop out water whenever it rained. My parents didn't make a lot of money back then and rarely ever spent money on frivolous things like new clothes or shoes. We mostly wore hand-me-downs. Unfortunately for my brother, he was the first boy in the family, so he mostly wore my clothes. My parents, they worked hard, and I never knew it wasn't enough until we moved into an upper middle class neighborhood. This was when I started to realize that the kids split into two groups, the haves and have-nots. In other words, the cool versus the uncool kids. I was, surprisingly, not really, an uncool have-not who was often teased because I couldn't afford clothes from the Gap. Wanting to fit in, I learned to work hard so that I could afford the nice things. I was determined to keep up with the Joneses. In my 30s, I prioritized work over family. Longer hours at the office meant bigger titles and more money. Until about 7 years ago, I hit a wall. Nothing I had accomplished felt like it was enough. Success still seemed so far away. But the problem was that I had nothing left to give. I was already so tired from working so hard. Frustrated with how hopeless it all seemed, I complained to anyone who would listen, and most of my friends, they empathized, except for one. She listened to me vent a little before she said, "But Jean, it looks like you have it all." Her comment threw me off because I never saw myself as having it all. There was still so much more that I didn't have. So this got me thinking, how could my life look so different from the outside? And if I was already a cool kid, why couldn't I see my own success? They say that Thomas Edison once said that there is no substitute for hard work. Thomas Edison was wrong. Hard work is not the key to success. But Americans glamorize hard work. It's embedded into the American dream. And Harvard Business Review agrees that hard work is important, but to early career advancement. So here's the problem. For individuals who have worked hard and passed the initial stages of their career, they've earned a promotion, gotten a raise or two, and they continue working hard, hoping for more, but only to find themselves struggling to keep up with the Joneses. So let me ask you this question. How much harder do we actually have to work to finally blow past the Joneses? But perhaps the better question is, how much harder can we work? Studies have shown that 65% of high-earning individuals work at least 50 hours a week, with 35% of these individuals working more than 60 hours a week. Seems pretty harmless until you take into account other studies that have shown that individuals who work more than 55 hours a week have increased chances of heart disease, stroke, and depression. Is this the success you're working so hard for? All right, so we know that hard work doesn't work. Then what does? You may have been told to work smarter, not harder. But what does it actually mean? What is the difference between working smart versus working hard? Well, what some people seem to mean when they say work smarter goes something like this. You and Dave are both coworkers, and you're given the same assignment. Dave works hard to complete the assignment by the deadline. You work smart. You know the shortcuts, and you get the work done in less time than it takes Dave. But with the remaining time that you have, you decide that you're going to throw in a PowerPoint and draft a white paper to summarize your findings, and you hand this all in by the deadline, so you win, right? Well, not necessarily. You still work the same number of hours as Dave. And if you're the kind of person seeking success, you're going to continue to work smarter for the same amount of time that Dave is working harder. So your reward for working smarter, more work. And doesn't this bring us right back to where we started in the first place? Exhausted, working hard, chasing the next big thing. So how do you achieve more if neither working smarter or harder gets you the success that you're seeking? I like to argue that it's not hard at all. I'm offering a different kind of success. I call it fractional success. During my first pregnancy, I could devour an entire medium pizza all by myself. I didn't do it often, but when I did, I felt full and happy afterwards. It satisfied both craving and hunger. And bonus points, it totally grossed out my husband too. Then during maternity leave, when I tried to do it again, looking for that same feeling of satisfaction, I couldn't finish the whole pie. I couldn't even finish half of it. Instead, I felt sick. They say that the key to success is to stay hungry. But what they don't say is that success is not static. You don't always need to eat the whole pie to feel full. Sometimes 1 or 2 slices with just the right toppings may be all you need. Anything more may make you sick. Fractional success is like that pizza. You don't have to do everything or be everything in order to be successful. You get to choose. But how do you choose? When my friend said to me that it looked like I had it all, her comment threw me off, and it took me a while to realize that it was because I was feeling out of alignment with the success that I had already achieved. I was trying to eat that whole pizza again. I was trying to be the best in all areas of my life without figuring out what mattered the most to me. Just like people eat mindlessly, I was trying to work hard mindlessly. I was working hard for the sake of working hard because that's what was expected. And because I was so concerned with what everyone else thought, I was expressing success, but not experiencing it. So how do you apply fractional success so that you can achieve more with less? First, slice your life into 5 to 10 different categories. For example, you may have children, parents, spouse, employee, and friends. Other people may also have activist, athlete, volunteer, homemaker, churchgoer. Then you're going to place your hands right here in the center of your heart space and ask yourself this question. Of the categories that you have, which is most important to me right now? And circle the category that comes first to mind. No judgment. Then over the next couple of days, keep a running list on your phone of everything that you do, even the little tidying up. And when you have a good list to work with, start to take the items in your list and separate them into one of two categories, your plus and minus. For all the things that you do that are contributing to the category that you have chosen as most important, this goes in your plus. All else will go into your minus. These are what we call distractions that are keeping you from accomplishing the thing that you have identified as most important to you at this time. Then you're going to take consistent, intentional action each day to do the things in your plus list. But most importantly, you're going to release the stress and guilt that you may feel about not getting to your minus list. They're just not important at this time. Here's an example. About a month ago, my husband was ill, and my categories look like this: TEDx, work, being there for my parents and friends, taking care of my children, and of course, taking care of my husband. Placing my hands on my heart space, I knew immediately that the most important thing to me at this time, or at that time, was to make sure that my kids' lives continued as normal as possible. So my plus list was focused on taking them to camp and picking them up, making sure they didn't starve to death and that they had social interaction. In my minus list went work and laundry. This happened to be one of those family first moments. Then, as my husband recovered, I reassessed. My categories didn't change, but my plus and minus list did. In my plus list, I was focused on catching up with work and making sure that I come prepared tonight. Laundry stayed in my minus list. Now, I know what you guys may be thinking, that, Jean, you gotta do laundry at some point, right? Yes, but not when other categories needed me more. And don't worry, as I am on my last stretch of clean undergarments, I have a very exciting date with my washer and dryer this weekend. But here's the most important thing. As I am doing my laundry, my energy is focused on my laundry. When my kids ask me to play, I won't feel guilty about saying no because they don't need me more than the laundry does at this time. Just like I didn't feel guilty about putting the laundry aside when my kids needed me more. And here's the thing. This is what a commitment to fractional success looks like. You don't have to be all of it all the time. When you approach your life like this, hard work stops being hard. The work itself doesn't change. Laundry is laundry. But because your work is now aligned with what's most important to you, your perspectives change. You get to accomplish more with less. I was finally able to stop expressing success and start experiencing it. And for the best part, when I committed to fractional success, something unexpected happened. I began to make better memories. I no longer felt the need to Photoshop myself into my family's mental pictures. I was actually in them. And most importantly, I had my own. It's easy to settle for hard work, but to truly experience success, you have to do the hard work of making things easy. Thank you.
We have one more fabulous speaker for you tonight before we close out TEDx Oneonta. And he is definitely the most well-traveled speaker we have ever had. He is known as the New York Sherpa. Please help me welcome Josiah Brown.
So there I was as an 8-year-old boy with a hammer trying to pull nails out of these dilapidated pieces of wood. I was helping my grandfather tear down a shed. He wanted to put a new one where it sat, and what job do you give the 8-year-old boy? You give him a hammer, and he starts pulling nails out of these boards. Well, I started to notice something particular. He was taking these nails, they were broken and bent and rusty, and he was putting them in a little metal can. And I was like, he has plenty of nails. In fact, he has metal cans everywhere full of nails. I asked my father later, I said, why was Grandpa saving all of these nails? Without skipping a beat, my father said, oh, well, he was a product of the Great Depression. And somehow, even at 8 years old, I knew what that meant. You see, there was a generation that had gone through an experience, and it changed how they thought, and then it changed how they acted. And we just covered it with a blanket of grace, a simple phrase, and we all understood. So I'm a millennial. I know I'm a millennial because I took one of those little quizzes on Facebook. I came out 70% millennial. I was like, okay, I'll take it. But I've also traveled now almost 800,000 miles extensively across New York State and across 46 states of America, and now stacking up the international countries. And I have just as many locations on my bucket list now. So that's the other way you would know I was millennial. Our generation also went through a very unique set of circumstances and years that changed how we thought and therefore how we acted. The good news is the millennials finally get to save the day this time, because the change in our travel habits are how we're going to stabilize communities into the future. And perhaps right now is the greatest opportunity for rural communities to leverage a growing visitor economy and the realities of what that means to call young professionals back after college and have growing families and thought leaders in rural communities that have suffered the loss of residents for years. You see, traditionally, travel happened in two buckets. You had the family trip and the retirees traveling. And I remember the family trip. We'd pack into the minivan and head for the shore. Tom Bodette said he'd leave the light on for us, and he did. But we had to wait until we retired to see the world. You see, there was a mantra that was taught to us, and it was repeated so often it became how our brains thought. Do as well as you can in high school, go as far as you can in college, and then get into a good company with good benefits, good retirement, and you put your head down, and you push, and you push, and you work, and you buy a house, and you buy 2 cars, and you have 2.3 kids on average. So we said, okay, and we started into this, because one day when we retire, we're going to get to travel the world. But I was 16. I remember exactly where I was standing on that day in September when the world stopped turning. And suddenly fear and terror and war became a part of our lexicon. And at that moment, trauma became a part of our life. We just didn't really know it yet. And they said, don't worry, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. So, okay, so we soldiered on to this mantra. 7 years later, not long enough to be a once-in-a-lifetime event. I don't know exactly what happened, but I think a stern bear collapsed on Wall Street, or maybe it was a bear stern, I don't know. But by the time they were done mopping it up, the world had changed again. And now we were watching even more dramatically people fall to the bottom of balance sheets and just be gone. 17-year careers, 20-year careers ended. Entire retirement accounts wiped out. Houses going underwater. Now can we afford those 2 cars, also the 2.3 kids? It was a difficult time. You see, Generation X had already walked through that door. The door was closing. The millennials stepped back and said, wait. We're not waiting to retire to travel the world. We're grappling with a higher level of anxiety that any generation has wrestled with. We want experiences, not things. We're going to put off buying a house. We'll need one eventually. We've got to have somewhere to put all of our participation trophies. But we're going to pause. We're going to go see the world, and travel we did. The millennial generation started traveling more than any generation in history. 3, 4, 5 times a year we were traveling. From 18 to 30, no generation had ever traveled that much. And they said, well, it's a little quirky how they travel. They sleep on air mattresses in people's third bedroom for $30. We gave birth to the shared economy. But those were our rusty and broken nails that we were collecting. It was a mark of a different era we had lived through and a different way we were thinking. We needed to see the world now. We needed to have experiences. We went into nature. Hiking, day hikes, biking trails, all these different amenities started to become normal. And we started to up influence and down influence into the other generations. Now Generation X started traveling a lot more. And Generation Z just thought this was normal. Everybody travels all the time. That gave birth to a completely new travel industry, because as we traveled, as anyone travels, visitors begin to build amenities and communities. We kind of, as millennials, we liked our espresso drinks, and we favored destinations that had espresso drinks. We liked guac. We know it's extra. Who doesn't love a taco bar? We liked yoga. Now there's a thing called hot yoga. All yoga for me in 2 minutes is hot yoga. I'm sitting there pouring. Somebody in the back is like, is somebody cooking bacon? I was like, sorry. It's me sweating. But you see, as these amenities started to grow, millennials are looking around, because as we started families, we started to look, where do we want to settle? Wouldn't it make sense that we started to settle in places that had been enjoyable to visit? And there comes the grand thesis. If you have a destination that young people enjoy visiting, you have a destination that young people will want to live in. And the reverse is also true. If young people don't want to visit your town, you probably don't have a town that young people will stay in after college. That's a threat. This is what the visitor economy, the new reality, was being birthed. And I work in the destination marketing and management industry, so I teach destinations how to use the visitor economy to stabilize that resident population, to make it an enjoyable place. We can simply use the visitor as the investor, the visitor as the catalyst to build the assets. It's a magnificent opportunity. Maura Gast from Destinations International, she's the former chair, and she had the brilliant way of putting it when she said, if you build a place that people want to visit, you are building a place where people are going to want to live. And if you are building a place where people want to live, now you're building a place where businesses have to be. And if you build a place where businesses have to be, now you're building a place that people want to visit. It becomes a cycle. It starts with a visitor. It's only that complicated. It starts with a visitor, and they build the quality of place, the quality of life that we then want to live around. So we fixed it. Done. Love it. Or so I thought. Coming outside of the pandemic, we thought, oh, for sure we're never going to have to defend travel again. People couldn't travel for 18 years, or 18 months, felt like 18 years. 18 months. Right after the pandemic, I was at an event, and a person came up to me and they said, have you heard what's happened in Goshen, New York? It's so sad. And I was like, no, I haven't heard what's happened in Goshen, New York. They said, oh, you have to hear what happened in Goshen, New York. It's so sad. And I'm like, I'm an empath. Like, what happened in Goshen, New York? And they said, they built a Legoland. This is where I start to turn into Liam Neeson. I have a particular set of skills that make me a nightmare for a person like you. because I knew what they were saying. I already knew how the conversation was going to unfold, and it did. Too many visitors, too much traffic. We don't need visitors in our town. I want them gone. The restaurants are full. There's two problems here that I have to unpack. Goshen, New York's in the Hudson Valley. It's a beautiful historic little town, and they built a Legoland resort there, the third in North America. And it was going to cause change in that community. But change was coming anyway. I could take you to 100 towns that were beautiful, quiet, historic little towns, and one by one the shops on Main Street disappear. Then the businesses disappear. Then the restaurants disappear. And next thing you know, you lose your volunteers for civic organizations and for non-for-profits and for theater groups. And then all of a sudden someone comes through and says, have you seen what's happened in this town? It's so sad. See, I know so many places that are slipping into post-agricultural, slipping into post-industrial communities. What was once working isn't working anymore. And the visitor economy is so portable now. Because post-pandemic, 30 to 40% of the world can work from anywhere. They can work from anywhere. Where are they going to choose to work? In places that are enjoyable to visit. So I know that we have to manage that traffic. We have to manage that flow. That's what we do in this industry. We have to work with the residents to know how much is too much. But I also know as that conversation went further, I say, hey, where are you traveling? And they said, oh, we're going to this place and we're going off the beaten path where the locals go. We found a pub where all the locals eat. Well, isn't that nice? You go to where the locals are, but you don't want visitors in your town. This is the compromise. This is what we have to work out in the future, is an understanding that we can't chase out the industry that is going to matter for everything we do in the future. We can't chase it out. So in the destination management and marketing industry, what we do is strike a unique brand for a destination. We find whatever that authentic thing that they have is, and we make it their brand, and we invite visitors. And then we manage to spread them out across the destination and spread them out across the calendar, across the seasons. We start to see how much is too much, how many visitors are too many visitors. Because if your favorite restaurant is full, that's not a lack of success in our world. Because you have that restaurant the rest of the year. Because the visitors fuel it so intensely 2 months a year. So we know that we have to have dialogue. More and more our industry is turning into destination stewardship, where we look at all of these factors and we work with residents to measure and figure out, how is this going to work? But it has to work, because we can't have our young people go to college and never come back. I want to live in a destination where my children can be gainfully employed. Maybe my daughter is going to go manage Legoland. Maybe my son is going to drive the propane truck that delivers to all the new restaurants that exploded after that park was built. Maybe the contractor standing on top of the short-term rental changing the roof is in the visitor economy the day that they're working on that roof. Because the visitor economy is beyond just tourism jobs. They're beyond just frontline jobs. They're all of the ancillary industries that have to rise up when an economy is flourishing. And we watch and we manage those factors as well. Because it's going to be the difference if your children walk up the block for Thanksgiving or if you have to all talk about flights. It's going to be the difference of whether cousins are going to school together. If we invite visitors and we manage it, they will stabilize us into the future. And I used to start with this, and now I feel more and more like I'm ending with this. I start now talking about the economics. But remember the social side of this. One of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain, actually my second favorite quote from Mark Twain. My favorite quote from Mark Twain is, "Don't believe every quote you read on the internet." Mark Twain. My second favorite Mark Twain quote is that travel proves deadly to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. We need Yes. We need to travel. We need to see other parts of the world. We need to learn from other cultures and other people. And then we need to invite them into our destination so they can do the same. Travel has exposed me to more than I ever thought it would. And right now, we have the opportunity to use it as a tool to stabilize our communities. And rural America, this is your moment, because people want fresh air, clean water, spaced out living, smaller school sizes, lower crime. It's on a platter. You have it. Building visitor assets will cause more people to want to live in your destination. And now we could have a growth in residents in rural places. And really what I believe is that tourists might just save your town. I have been Josiah Brown. Thank you so much for your time.
And there you have it. 6 more talks, 6 more inspiring ideas, ideas worth spreading from the TEDx Oneonta stage. We want to say, go ahead. I want to welcome back our speakers one more time, so keep it going. We have Noemi, Julianne, Jean, what that one? Juan Carlos, Kania, and Josiah. And the team that made this happen, our planning committee, many of us have been together for a few years putting this together. So I want them to come out too. We have Leslie Ann, Lisa Machut, Lisa Samuels, who are backstage. And then we have AJ Hecox, who is working the cameras, and Pam Sprock, who is out in the atrium. And one who is not here tonight, Cassandra Harrington. So thank you for the whole team that made this possible. And thank you all for being here. The night's not over yet. Hope you go out and spend a little more time with us, get to know the speakers. I'm sure you have questions. They're ready to answer. And join us for a short reception outside of the atrium. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back next year.